Made with spoken. 1,000 More Prologue by K.S. Lynn. Digital narration, performed by multiple digital voices. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Some choices never leave. They linger as ghosts, whispering what might have been. Manassas, Virginia. November 1981. Victoria opened the small black velvet box. A diamond-shaped amethyst stone, set in a gold band, sparkled under the glow of the parking lot lights. Nicholas's cheeks reddened.
It's an early Christmas present, a promise ring.
Victoria placed the ring on her left ring finger and smiled.
It's perfect.
You're perfect,
he said, resting his hand on her cheek. She leaned into him and kissed him deeply.
I love it, and I love you.
A tap on the steam-covered driver's side window startled them awake. Victoria searched for her sweatshirt and frantically pulled it over her head while Nicholas grabbed his jeans from the floor mat and slid them up in 2 seconds flat. The tapping repeated, more aggressively this time. Nicholas cranked the back seat window down and squinted when a bright light illuminated his face.
Everything okay here?
The police officer asked and then shone his flashlight on Victoria, who remained wide-eyed and frozen. She gripped the small blanket covering her half-naked body to keep her hands from shaking. Nicholas's voice quavered.
Yes, officer.
He scanned the interior of the car with his flashlight and stopped on Victoria's face again.
You okay, miss?
Victoria nodded as her heart pounded in her chest.
Can I see your licenses, please?
Nicholas reached into his back pocket. His trembling hand offered the license to the officer. He scanned the license with his flashlight and handed it back to Nicholas.
Miss?
I don't have mine with me.
What is your name?
Victoria Kingsley.
The officer raised an eyebrow.
Judge Kingsley's daughter?
Victoria lowered her eyes as shame covered her face.
Yes, Ted Kingsley is my father.
It's quite cold to be sitting in your car in the middle of the night. I'll let you off with a warning. I will not see your car in this parking lot again, correct?
Victoria didn't say anything but shook her head no.
No, you won't, sir.
Nicholas said.
Take Miss Kingsley home and drive safely.
Nicholas's eyes widened, then he nodded.
Yes, sir.
A few weeks later, Nicholas sat in his car in the Manassas high school parking lot waiting for Victoria, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel to the beat of Another One Bites the Dust. She opened the passenger door, slid onto the seat, and slammed the car door.
Geez, what's up?
He said, turning the radio volume down. Victoria turned to him. Her face carried an angry expression.
What's up?
Her eyes filled with tears.
What's up is I missed my period, Nick.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Maybe it's just late?
His cheeks burned.
I mean, we were careful. I pulled out.
Well, it didn't work.
His eyes widened as nausea washed over him. Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks.
What are we going to do? We still have our senior year of high school.
His head fell back against the headrest, and his heart pounded in his chest.
Shit.
He glanced at Victoria, now collapsed in her lap, sobbing. He wrapped his arm around her.
We'll figure this out, Vic. Please stop crying.
My parents are going to send me away somewhere. You know how my mother is.
She wiped her cheeks and sniffled.
All she cares about is her precious reputation.
Nick sighed.
Vic, they won't send you away, but we're gonna have to tell our parents eventually.
A nurse stood in the waiting room doorway and called out, Victoria? Why had the nurse called her name, she wondered to herself. She and her mother were the only two in the waiting area. Margaret Kingsley made sure they received the last appointment of the day so the waiting room would be empty. The nurse led them down a long hallway to the ultrasound room. Victoria climbed onto the exam table, laid back, and stared at the ceiling, while her mother sat in a chair by the door. Victoria was 7 weeks along, and her athletic swimmer's physique was undergoing subtle changes, which she hated almost as much as she hated her mother. Margaret's unsympathetic eyes were fixed on her watch, counting the minutes until she was free of this inconvenience. The technician applied warm gel to Victoria's abdomen, running the ultrasound wand in circles until finally stopping a few inches below her belly button. She turned the monitor so Victoria and her mother could see the blurry figures on the screen. She pointed to the monitor.
This is the amniotic sac, and here, these two white figures are your identical twins.
She offered a slight smile to Victoria, then glanced at Margaret, whose face now harbored disbelief. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Margaret stood up from the chair.
Did you say identical twins?
Victoria sat in the back seat of the Lexus, staring out the passenger window. Her mother's silence always made her uneasy. She was used to the impassive comments and would have rather been berated than left to wonder what her mother was plotting. They entered through the wrought iron gates of their family estate and parked when Ted appeared in the driveway and opened Margaret's door. His wife's expression caused him to furrow his brows. Victoria slid out of the back seat and ran up the brick-layered steps of their stately colonial home.
"Dickie!"
her father yelled. She reached the second floor and slammed her bedroom door, then fell onto her bed and sobbed. A few hours later, she made her way downstairs to the kitchen. Her appetite came in waves. Some days she had a voracious appetite, and on others, the mere sight of her favorite foods repulsed her. Tonight, though, she craved Hot Pockets and strawberries. Victoria watched the turntable slowly spin her dinner in circles, bubbling and steaming, mesmerizing her as she stuffed one strawberry after another into her mouth until the long beep of the microwave took her out of her trance. She turned around to set the plate on the kitchen island and jumped at the sight of her mother sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, her hands wrapped around a teacup.
You scared me, Mom.
Victoria, you will not be returning to school,
Margaret said calmly. Victoria clenched her jaw and scowled.
What do you mean? I'm not even showing yet. I'll wear big sweatshirts and sweaters as I get bigger.
The doctor already contacted the school nurse. Mononucleosis is very contagious. It can take months to recover from.
Victoria slammed the plate onto the island.
What are you talking about? I don't have mono, Mother.
Margaret stood up from the table and calmly walked to the island.
A private tutor will be here Monday morning at 8 a.m., and you will be presentable and respectful.
You can't keep me locked up in this house.
Oh, yes, I can, darling. You will attend the necessary medical appointments and nothing else.
I'm still going to see Nick.
That boy is the reason we are all in this situation. He will not set foot on this property.
Victoria rolled her eyes.
Seriously, Mother, I can't get more pregnant.
Margaret glared at her daughter, then released a reserved sigh.
Your father and I will take care of this mess. We will not let you jeopardize your future.
Victoria's eyes widened.
What do you mean you're going to take care of it?
Nothing you need to be concerned with.
Margaret glanced at the plate of Hot Pockets and raised an eyebrow.
Just eat your so-called dinner.
Nicholas shut the passenger door and ran around the front of his sedan and hopped in the driver's seat as if he were driving a getaway car.
Your parents are going to kill me if they find out that I picked you up.
Victoria buckled her seatbelt and sighed.
Just drive. I can't stay here another minute.
We can go to my house. My mom might be home. She's been asking about you.
Victoria rested her head back on the headrest and ran her hand over the basketball that was now her stomach.
You're so lucky that your mom is cool.
Well, I don't know about cool, but yeah, she's not your mom.
Victoria tilted her head toward Nicholas.
What are people saying at school?
Nothing really, Vic. I told them you still have mono, but, people talk.
Victoria's eyes filled with tears.
They'll never look at me the same way, like I really do have some horrible contagious disease.
Vic, that's not true.
You don't understand. You get to go to school and see all your friends, play basketball and baseball while I'm stuck at home growing fatter by the day.
It's not that easy at school either. I can hear their whispers, see their stares. Even the teachers look at me differently. It sucks. Thank God there's only a couple of weeks left.
I don't know if I can do this, Nick. I'm scared. I don't want to end up like my mother, cold and hateful because I've ruined my life.
You could never be like your mother, Vic. We'll get through this. I promise.
June 1982. Ted Kingsley glanced at his watch. An hour had passed since his 17-year-old daughter had been taken to the operating room. He looked up to see a tall, slender, athletic teen standing awkwardly next to his parents in the waiting area.
Can I see Victoria? Is she okay?
Nick asked.
She's not out of surgery yet.
Margaret snapped, staring at the teen until a delicate arm wrapped around his shoulder, diverting Margaret's eyes to a woman whose presence possessed warmth and genuine empathy. Nicholas's mother, Beth, placed her hand on her son's arm. Nick, I'm sure she'll be fine, and the babies too. Victoria's doctor entered the waiting room and approached the 5 faces staring at him in anticipation.
How are Victoria and the babies?
Ted asked.
Your daughter is a strong young lady. The C-section went well. She'll be sore, but she's young and healthy and should recover with no issues. She should be able to go home in a few days.
And the babies?
Beth asked.
With twins, it's not uncommon to deliver early. But as you know, Victoria was only 32 weeks, so we'll need to monitor the babies in the neonatal intensive care unit.
Beth held her hand over her mouth and tried not to cry.
Will they be all right?
They will need to stay in the NICU until we know they can breathe on their own. We'll keep you updated on their condition as soon as all testing is completed. Do you have any other questions?
Ted shook his head.
No. Thank you, Doctor.
Victoria should be out of recovery soon. Then you can see her.
He gave them a cordial smile, then disappeared down the long hall of the maternity floor.
Shall we all go to the cafeteria for coffee so we can talk?
Ted suggested. Beth gave Ted a gentle smile, then glanced at her son.
Nick, are you coming, honey?
He shook his head.
No, I'll stay here.
Okay, we'll be right back then.
The corners of Beth's mouth turned down. Her maternal instincts wanted to shield her son from the life-altering circumstances he would face as a teenage father. The cafeteria was dimly lit at 1 o'clock in the morning. Mark stared at the vending machine as a steady stream of coffee filled the styrofoam cup. He grabbed the cup, added a packet of sugar and creamer, then stirred the black liquid until it became pale brown. He walked over to his wife, offering her the first sip of caffeine. Ted extended his hand, gesturing to a table in the corner.
Why don't we have a seat to discuss the situation?
Beth glanced at her husband as the 4 of them took a seat at the table. Ted looked to his wife, then at Beth and Mark.
Let me be frank. Margaret and I have discussed this at great length, and feel it is in the best interest of Victoria, Nicholas, and the twins that they place them for adoption. They are in no position to raise a child, or in their case, twins. They haven't even graduated from high school.
Beth leaned forward and spoke in a hushed tone.
That should be Nicholas and Victoria's decision to make.
Mark placed his hand on his wife's.
Honey, we need to consider this.
He paused and looked at Margaret and Ted.
We need to make sure Nick and Victoria understand what this really means for their future and their baby's future.
Beth's eyes filled with tears as Mark squeezed her hand. Margaret straightened in her chair and clasped her hands together on the table.
Ted and I have been speaking with an excellent adoption agency. The babies will go to a loving, childless couple.
Beth scowled.
You've met these people? How long have you been planning this adoption? Does Victoria know?
Ted pinched his brows.
They are 17 years old with bright futures ahead of them. This is the best option for everyone.
Beth tilted her head, fighting back tears.
Mark?
We have to talk to Nick, honey. Do we want them to struggle just when they are starting their lives? I know this is difficult, but we must think about what is best for the babies too.
They are our grandchildren, for God's sake.
Beth stood up abruptly from the table and walked out of the cafeteria, holding her hand over her mouth. Mark also stood up and sighed.
I'm sorry. This is hard for all of us. This is not what we wanted for our son. I know it's not what you wanted for your daughter. Excuse me.
Ted faced his wife with a look of disappointment.
We should head back upstairs.
Margaret lifted her chin with an air of arrogance.
Beth will soon realize that this is the only option.
Beth returned to the maternity floor and stood in the hallway, glancing out a window, clasping her cross necklace. Ted and Margaret appeared in the waiting room, where Mark stood with his son. Margaret stared at Nick.
You realize if the babies need to stay in the NICU for an extended period, this will become quite expensive. What if they require lifelong care or any type of surgery? How will you pay for that or provide for them?
Nick looked at his father, unsure how to respond to Victoria's mother. Margaret stood with her arms crossed.
This is exactly why we talked with an adoption agency, just for this reason. Healthy twins are hard enough to raise, let alone twins with health complications.
Nick's eyes narrowed.
What would you know about raising children? You were never there for Victoria.
Nicholas!
Mark said, grabbing his son's arm.
That's enough. Go have a seat.
Victoria and I love each other. We didn't plan this or want this.
Nick looked down and ran his fingers through his hair.
Yeah, we talked about adoption, but maybe.
His eyes misted over.
We thought we could apply for college later and raise the twins first.
Mark placed his hand on Nick's shoulder.
Son, please go sit down.
A line appeared between Margaret's brows as she watched Nicholas walk away.
You must agree, Mark, that adoption is the only answer here.
Beth walked up to her husband and Margaret, then saw her son sitting by himself, with his head in his hands.
Is Nick okay?
Beth glared at Margaret.
What happened?
Mark placed his arm around his wife.
Let's talk privately, honey.
Then he led her to where their son was sitting. Mark sighed.
We need to discuss adoption, Nick.
A look of concern appeared on Beth's face.
Mark?
We don't know how long the twins will be in the NICU. What if they do need surgery or lifelong care?
Mark took her hand in his.
Honey, how will they be able to care for them?
Beth's eyes darted between her son and husband as a tear rolled down her cheek.
But they are our granddaughters. We can care for them.
Mark shook his head.
Beth?
Nick released a heavy sigh.
Mom, I think Dad is right. I can't ask you guys to take care of this, to take care of my mistake.
A nurse in pink scrubs entered Victoria's room, greeting her with a sweet smile.
Good morning, honey. How are you feeling?
She said tenderly.
What happened? Where am I?
You were in the hospital. You had the babies by C-section, sweetie.
Where's my father?
Victoria asked with sleepy eyes.
Your parents are out in the hall. I just need to finish checking your vitals and dressing.
The nurse was calm and nurturing, making Victoria feel comforted and cared for, something she never felt from her own mother.
I'll get your parents. You rest. You're doing well, sweetie.
Ted entered Victoria's room and stood by her bedside and clutched his daughter's hand.
How are you feeling, Vicky?
Margaret stood at the end of Victoria's hospital bed with a look of disgust.
Where are the babies?
Victoria asked.
Because they were born early, they require extra care.
Margaret replied coldly. Ted tilted his head.
Dickie, the twins will need to be in the neonatal intensive care unit until they can breathe on their own.
Will they be okay?
A knock on the door diverted their attention as a pleasant, sophisticated woman in a white coat entered the room.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Guma, the neonatologist currently assigned to the twins,
she said, offering her hand to Ted and Margaret.
I would like to discuss the condition of the twins and what to expect while they are in the NICU.
Ted nodded.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Doctor.
We currently have them labeled as Baby A and Baby B. Both are receiving supplemental oxygen. Baby A is 2 pounds more than her sister. We found Baby B to have an atrial septal defect or a hole in the septum between the atria. We will continue to monitor her and run more tests. However, at some point, we may have to recommend surgery.
She explained, then asked,
Do the babies have names yet?
Victoria shook her head.
No, but...
Margaret interrupted.
They are being placed for adoption. The adoptive parents will need to be informed of the twins' condition as well.
A deep crease formed between Victoria's eyes.
We didn't decide yet, Mother.
Dr. Guma glanced between Ted and Margaret.
I see. If that is the case, I will need consent forms in order to discuss the baby's condition with the adoptive parents, so please have them completed right away.
Victoria tried to sit up and winced, realizing the C-section left her immobile and sore.
I haven't seen them,
she whined.
A nurse can take you to the NICU in a wheelchair. You will feel sore for about 6 weeks, but it's important to get up and move around carefully. Just don't overdo it. I will give you an update later today.
Margaret waited for the doctor to leave, then looked at her daughter.
Victoria, this is exactly what we were concerned about.
Then she turned to her husband.
Ted, this could complicate the adoption.
Mother, what did you tell the adoption agency? I haven't decided yet. I didn't talk to Nick. You can't just make that decision for us. They are our babies, not yours.
Ted tilted his head.
Vicky, I know this is hard, but how will you be able to care for 2 babies, especially one who may require surgery? This affects your entire future, and theirs.
Margaret stood with her arms folded.
Don't be so selfish, Victoria. The idea of motherhood may have a fairy tale appeal, but it's not realistic. The world is cruel and unfair to young, unwed mothers. What kind of life will you be able to provide for the twins?
Victoria covered her face with her hands and sobbed. A timid and familiar voice called out in the doorway.
Vic?
Victoria looked up and put her arms out. Nick walked over to her, leaned down, and hugged her tight.
Are you okay? Why are you crying?
She buried her face in his shoulder.
Have you seen them?
Yeah, my parents took me to the NICU. They are so small, Vic, covered in wires and tubes.
Nick pulled away and sat on the hospital bed.
The doctor said one of them has a hole in her heart and might need surgery.
He shook his head.
They are so tiny. How do you do surgery on something so small?
While you were both here, we should discuss the obvious,
Margaret said methodically, as if she were orchestrating a business meeting. Nick's parents knocked on Victoria's door, then entered, sensing the tension in the room. Beth tilted her head.
Victoria, how are you feeling, honey?
Victoria started to answer when her mother interjected.
We were just saying we should discuss the arrangement.
Adoption, you mean?
Beth gave Margaret a look of disgust.
Yes, the adoption, Elizabeth,
Margaret said, then walked over and stood by her husband to present a united front.
This has been a difficult situation from the beginning. Now, with the premature delivery and condition of the twins, the adoption could be in jeopardy. Our representative is informing the prospective parents of the baby's condition as we speak.
Nick?
Victoria's voice broke as she cried.
What should we do?
I know we said we could do this, raise them ourselves, and then go to college, but I don't think we can do that now. To be honest, it scares the hell out of me. I know we're almost 18, but I'm not ready for this. Can you say that you are? Especially knowing that one of them might need heart surgery?
Nick tried to hold Victoria's hand, but she yanked it from his touch and turned her head away from him. Beth went to Nick and placed her hand on his shoulder.
Nick, why don't we let Victoria get her rest? She's been through a lot today.
Nick glanced at his mother, then back at Victoria, who still refused to look at him. He lowered his head.
Okay. I'll come back later. I love you.
Victoria didn't acknowledge him and tried to roll on her side, but the tightness of her incision jolted her. Tears rolled down her cheeks and soaked into the pillowcase. Soon the room was silent. Everyone had left. She wondered how Nick could agree with all of them, especially her mother. The morning sun filled Victoria's private room. Margaret stood at the second-story window with her arms crossed. This was the last place she wanted to be, but she had to keep up appearances, posturing as the doting mother. A nurse peeked her head into Victoria's room.
Mrs. Kingsley, you have a call at the nurse's desk.
I'll be right there,
she said. Margaret never reacted immediately. Whoever requested her attention was expected to wait until she was ready to acknowledge them. A few minutes passed, and Margaret appeared in front of the nurse's station.
Hello. Yes, I understand. Thank you, I'll meet you there,
she said, handing the receiver back to the nurse, giving her a contrived smile. Margaret walked back to her daughter's room.
Victoria, the adoption representative is here. I'm going to meet her at the NICU. I will take care of this. It's for the best, for everyone.
I saw them, you know,
Victoria said. Margaret scowled.
Who?
The babies.
Margaret looked at her daughter darkly, as if Victoria had defied her.
When?
Last night. The nurse wheeled me down to the NICU. I couldn't sleep.
Victoria looked away from her mother, not giving her the satisfaction of letting her know she was right about the adoption. Victoria looked down and played with a string on the hospital blanket.
They looked so helpless and frail.
I need to leave,
Margaret said, then stopped at the end of Victoria's bed.
Tend to yourself today. You'll be going home tomorrow morning.
Victoria watched her mother walk out of the room. She knew her mother was right, but she felt a deep-seated hatred for her.
Hello. It's nice to see you again, Miss Phillips,
Margaret said with a cordial smile.
I assume all the documents are in order.
Yes, Mrs. Kingsley, they are. We understand the twins will be in the NICU for some time, and my clients will pay for all medical expenses related to the twins' care, as we discussed.
Margaret nodded.
Very good.
We will need Victoria and Nicholas to sign the documents today, and as requested by all parties, this will be a closed adoption.
Yes, that's correct. I'll contact the Bennetts and have Nicholas here as soon as possible. Thank you, Miss Phillips.
Margaret said and smiled politely. Her daughter's indiscretion would soon be behind them. An hour later, Victoria came out of the restroom to see an entourage of people standing in her room watching her move gingerly to her bed.
How are you today, Miss Kingsley?
Ms. Phillips asked.
Sore, but okay, I guess.
Victoria replied, and groaned as she climbed back onto her hospital bed.
I realize that this decision is difficult and does not come lightly. You and Nicholas are giving the twins a secure future with a loving, grateful couple,
Ms. Phillips said compassionately. She walked over and laid the adoption papers and a pen on the hospital tray table and observed Nicholas, who fidgeted next to Victoria's bed, his eyes darting between the floor and his parents.
Hello, Nicholas.
He offered a slight smile and glanced at Victoria. Victoria picked up the pen and set it back down. She removed her amethyst ring, placing it on the tray table. Nick tilted his head.
Vic?
Margaret stepped toward her daughter, noting Victoria's hesitation. Victoria glared at her mother, then shifted her gaze to Ms. Phillips.
You'll make sure that this couple will take care of them and that they will always feel loved?
Ms. Phillips nodded.
Yes, of course.
Victoria picked up the pen again, signed her name, and slapped the pen down in front of Nick, refusing to look at him. The pen wavered in his hand as he signed his name, knowing this final selfless act would end his relationship with Victoria, but provide a hopeful beginning for their premature twins. He stepped back and released a heavy sigh, expressing his relief and sadness. August 1982, 2 months after the twins' birth. Victoria walked down the hallway on her way to the kitchen and stopped short when the phone rang. Lolita Avery, the Kingsley's housekeeper, answered.
Hello, Kingsley residence. Hello, Mr. Nicholas. No, she is not available, but I will let her know you called. Yes, goodbye.
Lolita's eyes widened when Victoria entered the kitchen.
Hello, Miss Victoria. How are you feeling today?
Victoria lowered her eyes.
What did Nick say?
Lolita tilted her head and her eyes softened.
He's worried about you.
Victoria sighed and walked over to the refrigerator. She stared inside it for a moment and then closed the door.
School starts in a few weeks. I don't think I'll be able to handle all the stares and whispers, Lo. Everyone knows I didn't have mono.
Victoria affectionately called Lolita Lo. She had been the loving mother figure Margaret Kingsley was incapable of being since the day Victoria was born. Lolita walked over to Victoria and placed her hands on Victoria's cheeks.
You will stand tall and remember who you are. I guarantee that the ones who throw the biggest stones have the weight of a boulder on their own shoulders, burdening them with their own secrets,
she said and kissed Victoria's forehead. Victoria smiled. She loved Lo's interesting and well-intentioned analogies. But regardless of whether the stone throwers have their own burdens to bear, high school is a cruel and unforgiving stage of life, and she would not be spared from their judgment. September 1982. First day of school. Nick entered the Manassas High School lobby alone. It was the first time in 4 years that he had walked into the school without Victoria. When she placed her promise ring on the tray table in the hospital, he knew they were over. He tried to reach out to her for nearly 2 months, but her distance and silence left an obvious message. She wanted nothing to do with him. Nick glanced at the senior benches and saw Victoria sitting next to one of her swim team mates. He was glad she had someone to help her navigate the first day of school and all the scrutiny of their classmates. She told him she had quit the swim team at the end of their junior year. With the twins due in August, he understood it would be hard for her to get back to the same competitive level before becoming pregnant. But even with the premature birth of the twins at the end of June, Victoria still chose not to swim her senior year. Getting through their last year of high school would be challenging enough, but he wished he could be her someone. Victoria glanced up and met Nicholas's eyes. They were caring and sincere, and her first instinct was to jump into his arms. He offered her a slight smile and walked toward her but stopped short. Victoria shook her head no. They had been through too much. She had to protect her heart. She stood up from the bench and disappeared down the science wing hallway. Nick strolled into biology class and gave a quick nod to his football teammate. He sat down next to him and hadn't noticed Victoria was seated in the back of the classroom. Victoria pulled out a notebook and began doodling. Two girls sitting in the next row glanced at her and spoke in hushed tones, but loud enough for Victoria to hear.
So, Angie, what did you do this summer?
The one girl asked.
I hit the beach, got some killer tan lines in my new bikini.
Victoria clenched her jaw and kept her eyes on her notebook. Angie glanced at Victoria.
Biology should be interesting, you know. Some people have more experience with it than others.
Victoria whipped her head up and glared at the two girls.
Do you have something you want to say to me?
Angie put her hands up and raised her eyebrows.
Geez, we were just talking. It's rude to eavesdrop on private conversations.
Nicholas and his teammate shifted in their seats and looked to the back of the classroom. Nick locked eyes with Victoria and mouthed, "Are you okay?" He hated seeing her endure the brunt of their classmates' scrutiny. She closed her eyes and sighed. Their senior year couldn't be over fast enough. June 1983. Graduation. Pomp and circumstance echoed throughout the Manassas High School stadium. Nicholas and Victoria's indiscretion had become old news by the new year. The superintendent gave his canned speech, which he had used over the last decade of graduations. Victoria stared at the stage, lost in thought. She made it through her senior year, but wondered about the twins. Were they healthy? Were they happy and showered with love? The screams of joy startled her out of her daydream as a sea of graduation caps sailed high above the class of 1983. Victoria met her parents at the stadium track and took the ceremonial photos and begged them to leave before her father entertained dozens of conversations. Nicholas approached them and offered a polite smile.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley.
Ted raised an eyebrow and offered his hand.
Congratulations, Nicholas. Good luck at Syracuse.
Nicholas smiled and nodded back.
Thank you, sir.
Margaret offered a contrived smile, then checked her watch as she had no intention of participating in polite conversation. Nicholas turned to Victoria.
Congratulations, Vic. I know this past year was hard, and it may not mean much to you, but I'm proud of you.
He tilted his head, then reached out and pulled her into him. She welcomed his embrace, having missed the feeling of being in his arms. He squeezed her tight and whispered in her ear,
I love you, Vic. Be happy.
She leaned back, unable to stop the tears from spilling down her cheeks, and met his tear-filled eyes.
You too, Nick.
2003, 20 years later. Victoria walked into Donuts and Dunks and took her place in line. The last time she was home was in 1993, after her father suffered a mild heart attack. He was back on the bench serving sentences 2 weeks after a brief stay in the hospital and a recovery week at home. She knew an extended period with her mother would speed up his recovery. A man at the counter gathered his drinks and corralled his two kids, who were each holding a candy-covered chocolate-iced donut. He guided them toward a table and stopped short.
Victoria?
A slight smile crossed her lips.
Hey, Nick.
He was 6 inches taller. His face was mature and handsome. He was now a man, not the awkward athletic teen from 20 years ago.
Guys, have a seat at the table. I'll be right there.
He said, then his face brightened.
How are you? Are you visiting your parents?
Victoria shook her head no.
Lo passed away.
Nick tilted his head.
Oh, Vic, I'm so sorry. I know you two were close.
She lowered her eyes.
Thanks. Yeah, she was the mother I never had.
So what are you doing nowadays?
I was an assistant swim coach at UConn.
Nick gave her a curious expression.
Was?
Yeah, I just resigned. My husband got a job in California.
His eyebrows raised when she said, my husband.
I'm glad you stayed involved in swimming. I know you loved it.
Victoria nodded.
Yeah, I do. It's funny, I recommended one of our swimmers for my job. She reminds me of you.
She shrugged her shoulders.
I don't know why. Maybe it's her ocean eyes, like yours,
she said as a warmth rushed into her cheeks.
Anyway, she's a fantastic swimmer and a great young lady. What brings you into town? You visiting your parents?
Nick chuckled and smiled as his cheeks also warmed with a pink hue.
Yes, and the class reunion.
He shook his head.
I can't believe it's been 20 years since we graduated.
A woman appeared next to him, placed her hand on his arm, and smiled at Victoria.
Hey, babe, sorry it took so long. There was only one stall,
she said, rolling her eyes. Nick glanced at his wife and then back at Victoria.
Honey, this is Victoria. We went to high school together.
Victoria extended her hand.
It's nice to meet you.
His wife was stunning, with long, wavy, dark blonde hair, brown eyes, and a figure that concealed she had ever given birth to 2 children. She extended her hand and smiled.
Hi, I'm Kate.
Nick motioned to their son and daughter to come over to them. He rested his hands on their shoulders and looked down at them proudly.
This is NJ, he's 10, and this is Sophie, who's 8.
Victoria smiled. NJ, obviously, Nicholas Jr., had his father's blue-green eyes and facial features. Sophie was also a replica of her mother, the perfect family.
Hi, it's nice to meet you both.
A man wrapped his arm around Victoria.
Hey, babe, sorry, I had to park a block away.
She smiled awkwardly.
Carter, this is my friend from high school, Nick Bennett, his wife Kate, and their children NJ and Sophie.
Carter offered a broad smile and extended his hand.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
Nicholas and Kate shook Carter's hand, then Kate looked at Victoria.
Are you guys going to the reunion?
Nick's eyes widened. He had told Kate about the twins, but she didn't quite grasp what Victoria had endured during her senior year of high school, and that she wouldn't go anywhere near a class reunion. Victoria glanced at Nick and gave Kate a polite smile.
No, I'm not.
Carter squeezed his wife.
I told her she should go. It will be fun catching up with her classmates, but she refuses.
He shook his head and shrugged his shoulder. Nick nodded politely and gave Victoria a sincere smile. It was obvious Carter didn't know about the twins, and how cruelly his wife was treated by her so-called friends. If he did, he wouldn't be pushing Victoria to attend her reunion. Victoria tilted her head and tried to keep her eyes from misting over.
Well, it was nice to meet you all. You have a beautiful family, Nick. Have fun at the reunion.
She turned to her husband.
Shall we get back in line?
Carter smiled and gave them a wave.
It was nice to meet you all.
It was great to see you, Vic. Good luck in California,
Nick said. Then he opened his arms and pulled her in for a hug and whispered,
I'm happy for you. Take care.
Victoria watched Nick's perfect family of 4 walk out the door. She was grateful that he had moved on and found happiness. But she wondered, would he tell his children one day about their half-siblings?
Vicky,
Carter said, getting her attention to place her order. She hadn't noticed they had reached the front counter, and after a few minutes they grabbed their drinks and specialty donuts and took a seat by the large plate glass window that was beautifully hand-painted with a whimsical summer theme. Carter had a look of concern on his face.
Are you okay? You're awfully quiet all of a sudden.
Victoria tilted her head and placed her hand on her husband's.
Carter, I think it's time I told you the truth.
Carter's eyes widened.
Truth? The truth about what?
The real reason why I didn't want to have children.
Thank you for listening to 1,000 More Prologue. I hope you enjoyed the story of Nicholas, Victoria, and their identical twins. If you'd like to read how the twins' journey continues, 1,000 More is available in print, ebook, and audiobook created by Spoken AI, wherever you like to purchase your next favorite book. Copyright 2025. 1,000 More Prologue. K.S. Lynn. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the publisher, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. This prologue is a free promotional edition and is not intended for resale. Published by 20 Years Publishing, LLC, www.kslynn.com.
The story behind the story. My novel, 1,000 More, was born from a dream in 2005. I knew the names of my main characters, their personalities, what they looked like, and for several nights their story played out in my mind like a movie. I spent several weeks typing away at my computer as their story flowed from my fingertips to the computer screen. But one morning, after sending my 3 young children off to school, I sat down at my computer and hit the power button. No lights, no sound, nothing. I tried to ignore the panic that filled every cell in my body and checked all the cords, then pressed the power button again. Still nothing. My computer had died, taking with it my first 25 pages. My heart sank, and I took it as a sign I was not meant to write a novel. I said goodbye to my characters, their story, and my dream. With 3 kids and 2 dogs, I was in survival mode for the next 14 years, and occasionally I would think about my characters. But in 2019, with my kids now grown, the desire to write came back. After years of writing and editing, in 2025, 1,000 more became a reality. This prologue was originally Chapter 1 of the novel, but is now a standalone free read. As the novel developed, the 17-year-old parents of the identical twins became a footnote, so I wanted to give them their due, tell their story, because without them, there wouldn't be 1,000 more.
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.